Hello students, I am Dr. Amit Bhatnagar, working as Senior Research Officer in the Department of Agronomy at GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar, Uttarakhand. In this lecture, I will explain about the difference between hand bidding and chemical control of weeds by herbicide. So what is the basic difference? We will discuss point wise. Actually, these differences are very important and may be asked in examination in assertion and reason based or in objective part. So in case of hand bidding, we use some implements to uproot the weeds, while in case of chemical bidding, we use some chemicals to kill some target plants, and these chemicals are known as herbicides. So we know the basic difference that in case of hand bidding, removed by hand, and in case of chemical bidding, herbicides are used. But there is some other difference. What are these differences? We will discuss. For example, these are the points on which we will discuss and explain one by one. Number one is target weeds. So when we go for hand bidding and we are using any implements to remove the weeds, then we remove all the weeds, whether it is broadleaf weed or grassy weed or sages. Particularly sages are effectively removed by hand bidding because they are not in the soil and can be removed by implements. So we remove all the weeds, all type of weeds. So there is a complete removal of plants, weeds from the crop. While in case of herbicides, these herbicides are selective herbicides and they kill the particular type of weeds, whether it may be broadleaf or grassy. And most of the herbicides control the broadleaf weed, VLW, and grassy weeds, and very few are effective on sages, on cypress species. So herbicides do not kill all type of weeds, they kill a special type of weeds, and most of the herbicides are broad spectrum. Broad spectrum herbicides are those herbicides which control a number of weed flora, means control the broadleaf weeds, grassy weeds, sages. And narrow spectrum herbicides are those herbicides which kill only one or two type of weed species. So nowadays most of the herbicides are broad spectrum, but the problem is sages. There particular specific type of herbicides are used to kill sages. For examples, halosulfuron is used to control the sages in maize and sugarcane crop. And in case of hand bidding, remove all type of weeds. So if we talk about the weed removal, so there is a complete removal of all type of weeds, and some weeds are not controlled by a particular herbicide. So this is the basic difference. Then we talk about the resurgence, regrowth of the weeds. Actually, in case of hand biddings, there is a removal of weeds with the root part and their underground parts. So these parts are removed and shoot part is effectively removed. So shoot and root both are removed. So that's why a resurgence chance, means regrowth of plant, is very less. While in case of herbicides, herbicides are applied on the canopy, so underground parts remain viable. Only the upper part, shoot part, leaves are damaged by herbicide, killed by herbicide, but this underground part remain viable, maybe nut, sages or other root, and resurgence, regrowth by this viable root part is possible. So resurgence in case of herbicide is possible. That's why pre-emergence herbicide are used and post-emergence herbicides are used. So combination of pre and post-emergence herbicide is used to control the regrowth of the plants. While in case of hand bidding, there is no possibility of resurgence, or resurgence is late. So if there is a resurgence, then no effect on crop. While in case of herbicide, possibility of resurgence, regrowth. So that's why we have to repeat application of herbicide. We talk about the application of hand bidding in crop geometry. And this, if narrow geometry is there, narrow geometry, if crop is shown at 20 centimeter like a wheat, then hand bidding is not possible. So this is the constraint because for hand bidding a space is required for to run the implement or to work manual work. A space is required, 45 centimeter or 60 centimeter spacing is required. But wheat is sown in narrow spacing 20 centimeter, and this space is very narrow, so it is very difficult to run any to go for hand bidding, very narrow spacing. So this if geometry is narrow, then hand bidding is not effective. Very problematic is hand bidding, and we cannot go for a sickle or spade और खुरपी. सो ये बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है कि अगर नैरो स्पेसिंग है उसके बीच में जाके हैंड बिडिंग करना, क्योंकि बैठने के लिए जगह चाहिए और स्पेस नैरो रहता है, तो बैठ के हैंड बिडिंग नहीं कर सकते, कोई इंप्लीमेंट फावड़ा खुरपी या दराती नहीं चला सकते हैं, तो हैंड बिडिंग इस तरह की क्रॉप्स में डिफिकल्ट हो जाती है. बट इन केस ऑफ हर्बिसाइड, herbicides are applied on the in the inter-row space and there is no such problem. So herbicide can be used in all type of crop geometry. So this is the limitation, or we can say constraint of hand bidding, that it is cannot be performed in narrow spacing crop, and for example wheat. If it is less than 45 centimeter, then it becomes difficult. So narrow 30 centimeter also difficult in 30 centimeter. And wheat is a good example. It is narrow spaced. Then involvement of time and labor. Hand bidding manual labor is used, and shoot part and underground parts are removed. So that's why it take more time and more labor is required. So it is very difficult to go for hand bidding with few levers. Many levers are required and it takes time. So it is time consuming and labor consuming operation. While in case of herbicide, labor involvement is only hardly 1 or 2. 2 labor can spray in 1 hectare area, and time maybe 6 hours, 8 hours on 10 hours depending upon the efficiency of the labor. Not more than 1 day. So in half or 1 day, we can spray the herbicide in 1 hectare area with the help of 2 levers. But in case of hand bidding, if we talk about 1 acre area weeding in maize crop, then about 10 or 15 levers are required. So it is time taking, takes more time, and labor involvement is more. And availability of labor at one time. Suppose 1 hectare area and we want to remove the weeds in 1 or 2 days, then requirement is about 30 labor. And the availability of labor at one time, at 1 day, becomes very difficult. So that's why it is labor consuming, more labor is required, more time is required. While in case of herbicide, work is done only in 1 day. And then if we talk about the economy, so more levers are required, so it cost is high. Cost is high in case of hand bidding, more number of laborer engagement. Suppose 30 levers are required, and then wages of 30 labor would be involved in hand bidding. While in case of herbicide, in cost of 2 labor and the cost of herbicide, and most of the herbicides are in the range of 1000 rupees in general, not the other herbicides. Some herbicides are costly, but if we compare the cost involvement, so definitely hand bidding involve high cost. That's why economics as compared to chemical weed control is more, because, and the exact reason is more involvement of laborer in hand bidding. Then effectiveness, if we talk about the effectiveness is high in case of hand bidding, because resurgence is very less and underground parts are also removed. So possibility of regrowth of weeds is very less. So 1 hand bidding is sufficient during critical growth period in cereal, pulses and oil seeds. And in case of herbicide, resurgence is there and some weeds are escaped and not killed by herbicides. So that's why effectiveness of herbicide as compared to hand bidding is low. Otherwise, herbicides are effective. They are effective in killing weeds, and wheat flora can be controlled by herbicides. So as such, we cannot say that herbicides are not effective. Herbicides are effective in controlling weeds. But if we compare with the hand weeding, then in comparison to hand weeding, herbicides are not as effective as hand weeding, because in hand weeding we remove the underground part, root part, rhizome, nuts. So resurgence possibility is less. So if we talk about the regrowth, resurgence and another weed regrowth, then hand weeding is more effective as compared to herbicides. Then impact on soil health. When we go for hand weeding, then some soil is exposed, so aeration is improved. So and then gaseous exchange is improved, and microbial activity is enhanced because of this aeration. But in case of herbicides, actually herbicides are toxins, or we can say these are poison, and when they are applied on the soil, so they also act as poison for microbes. So microbial population is reduced. So by the application of herbicide over the years, if we are using herbicide in huge amount, then over the years it is likely that microbial population may be reduced, bacterial population may be reduced, fungal population may be reduced. So there is an adverse effect of herbicide on the microbial activity, and microbes are involved in nutrient transformation, mineralization, organic matter decomposition. So there is a huge role of microbes in soil fertility. So by the application of herbicide in huge amount, high dose, more application, result poor microbial activity, and overall soil health is deteriorated. But in case of hand weeding, there are no such type of effect. Rather, soil is quality is improved, soil health is improved because aeration is improved. So in this point, in case of soil health, herbicide have negative role and hand weeding has positive role on soil health. Then ecology, definitely ecology is not disturbed in case of hand weeding, because we remove only the weeds in the inter-row space. But herbicides, as we have discussed in case of soil health, are poison and they are lethal. So ecology is disturbed because microbial population is affected and other flora, plant flora affected. So ecology is affected, and these herbicides being poison act as a pollutant. They pollute the soil, they pollute the water when they mix with the water, and they pollute the environment during the manufacturing, during the production, and during the application. So these herbicides actually contribute in pollution. So that's why ecology is adversely affected, and in case of hand weeding, no such type of effects are seen. So herbicides are effective, they have quick control, labor requirement is less, economically they are more superior to hand weeding, but on as a whole, on the ecology, on the soil system, on the air, on the water, they deteriorate the quality of all these all these parameters, we can say, or but they deteriorate the environmental quality. Then residual effect, actually hand weeding only weeds are removed, so they do not carry the residual effect, means because no toxins are used, no poisons are used. But in case of herbicides, when we apply herbicide, for example in Kharif season, so herbicides or stick or adhere on the soil particles and also show residual effect on succeeding crop, for example in Rabi crop. So some herbicides which are applied on Kharif crop also show their toxicity effect on Rabi season. So herbicides have residual effect, so they continue their residual activity and hamper the or adversely affect the succeeding crop. So residual effect is a problem in case of herbicides. Then wet soil condition, hand weeding is not possible. Not possible because if soil is wet, then it is difficult to uproot the weeds because soil makes clod and it is very difficult to run and implement like SPAD. So during just after rainfall or after irrigation, hand bidding is not possible. Soil is not in workable condition. So we cannot move into the field if field is wet or water is there. But herbicide can be applied after irrigation or after rainfall. If soil is wet, no problem. Herbicide can be sprayed by machine or by tractor operated machine. So herbicide can be applied in wet soil condition, while hand bidding cannot be done in wet condition. So hand bidding is possible only when soil is in workable condition, means we can move in the field. If soil is wet, the soil it is difficult to remove the weeds in wet soil. So these are the some points, some advantages or some constraints of hand bidding and herbicides. So herbicides are effective, no doubt, but their effectiveness is not more as compared to hand bidding. And economically, herbicides are more give more net return, give more profit as compared to hand bidding, because more cost is involved in hand bidding. So overall, if we want to remove the weeds effectively from the weeds without hampering the ecology, without adversely affecting the succeeding crop, we should go for hand bidding. No doubt money is involved, some cost, more cost is involved. But if soil is not workable and we want to save the money, then herbicide can be applied, but with the precaution that herbicide should be applied with the recommended dose and the right method and the appropriate time. If these are not selected in case of herbicide, then herbicide will hamper the crop, soil condition, ecology and the succeeding crop. So this is the comparison between hand bidding and chemical weed control. So some positive points are in hand bidding and some positive points in herbicide. So the selection should be depend upon the condition, what is the condition and what is the crop, then accordingly we can select these two. So this was the comparison of hand bidding and chemical control of weeds by herbicides. Thank you very much.